Michael was searching for a place to stay in New York as he was offered a new job in Brooklyn. He was feeling disheartened as the more places he searched, the more he felt he couldn't afford anywhere as there was no place that met his budget. But suddenly, when he was just about to give up, something caught his eye. He had to read it twice to make sure he wasn't imagining it. There was an apartment in a building in Brooklyn, just a few blocks from where he was starting his job. He couldn't believe his luck, so he emailed the company right away, and a week later he moved in and was lying down on his bed smiling at the fact he had a place of his own in Brooklyn and was about to start a new job. He began to read a book and relax as he was starting work in a week. He was feeling tired and was about to go to sleep, so he laid the book down beside him on the bed. Then he suddenly got a start when something like a shadow moved on the wall in front of him. He looked around expecting to see someone that made the shadow, but no one was there. No one was in the room. The shadows began moving around the room. He couldn't make any sense of them. Michael found it very hard to go to sleep that night, but eventually he slipped into a deep sleep. The next night, the same thing happened. The next day he was walking down the street and past a street basketball court. He knew that the guys playing were looking at him strangely, so he asked could he help them. One guy said to Michael, "You're that guy who moved into room 456 in the building right up the block, right?" Michael was surprised these strangers knew and replied, "Yes, how do you know that? And why do you ask?" The boy said, "Man, did you hear anything about that place? There's weird stuff happens there, that's all I'm saying." Michael was thinking about the boy's words, and instead of carrying on for his walk around the blocks like he usually did since he arrived in Brooklyn, he walked right back to his apartment. He opened his laptop and searched his address. He froze in horror when he saw a photo of a little boy and a man and woman on the screen. He guessed they were his parents. As he read on, he learned that the little boy was out playing one day when a Necronomicon book from H.P. Lovecraft was thrown out the window from stories above and hit the boy on the head. The boy suffered memory loss and trauma and was put into foster care, and his parents were found in the apartment with their bodies mutilated. There was no evidence of anyone in the apartment, and no conclusion as to what really happened to the boy's parents. Michael heard of H.P. Lovecraft before, and knew about his famous monster, Cthulhu. Then suddenly shivers ran up his spine as he thought of the shadows going up and down the wall many times since he arrived in the apartment. They reminded him of what Cthulhu looks like that he saw down through the years. He remembered when he was a kid reading comics, and the character was in loads of the pages in different forms of horror. Then suddenly Michael heard a noise, and he screamed when he saw a weird-looking monster in front of him, which even though he couldn't believe his eyes, knew that it had to be Cthulhu. He screamed as the monster rushed for him, and as he backed back more and more, Michael fell through the glass out the window and fell on the ground and was killed instantly. As he was falling to his death, his memory came back, It was always Kalulu who was making sure of Michael's fate. Michael got his job in Brooklyn and found the apartment and was drawn here by the spirit of Kalulu, who hadn't finished him years ago. The curse only had power in the apartment. Just before he hit the ground, he had remembered he was that little boy in the photograph so many years ago that got knocked unconscious by the Necronomicon being thrown from his apartment. Now the job is done, and now Michael is gone. Jessie and her friend Kayla were at home watching a horror movie when they started talking about the local legend, Slender Man. Jessie was saying, "Slender Man is real. He isn't just a made-up character." Kayla said, "Do you really expect me to believe you that a 10-foot tin man is real and you have seen him? Why didn't you take a photo of him with your phone then?" Jessie was getting annoyed and gave Kayla an angry look and said, "Okay, you don't believe me? Well, I can take you to the woods tomorrow to meet a friend of mine which will prove Slender Man is real." Kayla replied, "Okay, you're on." The next night Jessie and Kayla went out to the woods. They were walking down the woods when they saw a box with "First Clue" written on it. Jessie asked Kayla to see what was inside. Kayla said, "I suppose you think I'm afraid to open it." Then she opened it and retrieved a map where to go, looking for the next clue. As they walked about 10 minutes deep into the woods, they came across the next clue, which was another box. Kayla opened it again, and there was a map which apparently would lead them to the proof of Slender Man. As they walked towards where the map led them, there was a very high tree with a box hanging from it, saying "Proof." Kaylee said to Jessie, "There's no way I'm climbing that tree." Jessie said, "Turn around and close your eyes for 5 seconds. Then you can turn back around again and open them." Kayla said, "What are you playing at?" Jessie said, losing her patience, "Do you want to see the proof of Slender Man or not?" Kayla turned around and counted to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When she turned back, Jessie had the box next to her on the ground. Kayla asked her, "How did you climb way up there so fast? And what about this friend of yours you promised you'd show me? Where is he or she? Show me the proof of Slender Man being real. You told me your friend would show me the proof of Slender Man being real. How long do I have to wait to see the proof?" "Let me answer your first question first, and the second after," Jessie said. "First, I didn't climb the tree. And the answer to your second question is, my friend is over there, and he is the one who picked the box from the tree." Jessie pointed over towards the trees, and Kayla screamed when she saw the Slender Man. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content. Jane was knitting in her living room. She was very happy knitting, as always, because it always relaxed her and took away a lot of stress if she was feeling stressed. Suddenly she spotted something out of the corner of her eye, there was a woman who seemed to be exhausted, resting up against her wall outside. She looked out the window, and the woman didn't seem to see her. Jane felt very sorry for the woman and wondered, was she in a weakness? So she went outside and asked her would she like to come into her house for a cup of tea. A few minutes later, the woman sat down at Jane's table, and Jane brought her a cup of tea. The woman said, "Thanks very much, you did your good deed for the day." She drank her tea. Then Jane nearly fainted with shock when the woman took out a gun and pointed it at Jane. The woman said, "Okay, I know you have lots of money in this house and jewellery, so hand it over or I'm going to shoot you." Suddenly the woman felt kind of dizzy. The gun lowered against her will and then fell to the ground. A few minutes later the woman came around. She must have fell asleep. Jane was standing in front of her smiling. It had then hit her that her tea had been drugged. The woman was tied to a chair and gagged, while Jane smiled at her and said, "You see, I actually thought you were tired. I thought you were in a weakness, and I would have still tortured you. But now that I know you were trying to rob me, well, that brings the torture to another level." Jane took out a drill and smiled, then drilled into the woman's knees as tears were rolling down her cheeks. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content.